Okay, sorry about that. So let's see if we can get Harry to tell us what the next steps are.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting project, you know, it's scalable and people...
You have Latino students?
Yeah.
Who would be interested? Yeah.
And, you know, so obviously some bilingual ones.
Right. Yeah, we are broadcasting again, and it's up there, and where's Harry? So what else do you have going on?
Well, related to what Harry's talking about, one student in my media class is doing some work on immigration stories. Our dance department is doing a Stories of Immigration winter dance concert, and so one of the students who I teach is a dancer, and so she is going to have the local refugee person come in, and she's going to do an interview with them and interview these dancers and what ideas they're trying to get across, and it's like a fundraiser, and so that kind of seems to intersect a little with what Harry's talking about.
Huh. Harry, find us again. All right, have you started the American Creed work yet? Or?
Yeah, just starting it. Originally, I was going to charge right into it, and then decided to hold off a little bit because the air date seems to be getting pushed back. But anyway, I am doing it next week for sure.
Is that true? What's happening with the air date?
I think it was supposed to be like January 9th originally. Now I think it's in February. But anyway, I mean, it fits. We're going to be doing some of that work next week and the week after, I would imagine.
Do you want to say more what that work is?
Yeah. I mean, so...
Because, yeah, I sent a very strange email. But I can explain that we've set up, Christina has set up a LRNG organization where I can collect some of the curriculum you guys are doing there.
Oh, okay.
So that's one idea. So that's why I'm trying to follow up with what you're actually doing. Don sent me like pages and pages of stuff.
Right. So there's lots of...
In a very positive way.
Right. Yeah. So there's lots of... And there's this, you know, Google Plus community where there's lots of articles people are sharing with one another. And
yeah, I follow that too. Yeah.
Yeah. And so
So what are you doing? Yeah.
So, you know, we're starting with the American utopian ideal of the Declaration of Independence and things like that. And then they will be reading some of these resources that both Elise and Dawn and others and Casey have been sharing. And I'm just trying to have them connect with the students on Youth Voices who've written stuff already. So if the first pass was just maybe about a month ago now, where I had them just chime in on some American Creed posts of other students. And now I'm gonna, I think I zero in on a few of them and have my students actually read the same articles that the students had read.
Have you shown them that early draft of the movie or not?
Yeah, I'm gonna show them that next week.
Okay.
So they'll have that, and then you know, grounding. And then I was thinking I will give them the option of doing the Charlottesville playlist. So someone might do that, or you know, exploring another playlist. Because that seems to dovetail with the whole idea too, the Creed idea.
Hey, there he is. Okay, good.
Sorry about all that. Thanks for finding this again.
Sure.
Oh, look, Armand found us too.
Yeah, he was on the other link, and I was like, oh, you need to go to this link. So I think it was...
Oh, thank you for figuring it out.
Yeah.
So that was a real dumb thing I did. I was trying to turn off my sharing, and I turned off the whole thing. Anyway, Harry, why don't we? Armand, can you speak?
Yeah, sure. Can you hear
good,
me?
good. There you go. Yeah, we can only see the lower half of your face, by the way. So every way you can. There you go. That's better. So this is turning out to be even more casual than usual here on Teachers Who Can Teach It. But welcome. You contacted me a couple of days ago, maybe even last night, and said you want to get your kids on. I said, well, join us here. So introduce yourself and tell us what you're up to.
Sure.
Well, and we'll tell you who we are here in a second.
Yeah, I'm very curious. I teach in an international school in the Bronx, and everyone's immigrated in the past 4 years, but some people have just came a couple of months ago. So the whole school is learning English, but there's people who have had more background or less, and I'm in a reading class. So we're just reading a lot of, I don't know, I'm sure if you've heard of Newsella, and we're annotating a lot of Newsella's texts, and they do vocab presentations, and I'm trying to do as much bilingual in the sense that if you're going to translate something, put it in your own language, or if you're going to I have them do audios every week of what they learned, connections with their life, and try to do that in English and try to do that in your home language. So just to keep that kind of freshness. And I was just, my friend, her name is Melissa. Paul, I think you met her. You visited her school in the Bronx as
Melissa,
well.
yes. We used to teach together, yeah.
Oh, okay, nice. Yeah, so she told me about it, and I was like, this is amazing, because I would love to. We also use vocabulary. It's another technology thing. So, I mean, I would love to be able to fuse it all together.
So you're using computers all the time with your kids already?
Yeah, we got a Mac grant. So every kid in the school has an iPad. So it's pretty special, you know? And it's like, you know, they want us to be able to bring them up to like pace on computer literacy or iPad literacy at the same time as like reading literacy. So it's like bringing those two things together. As it's like,
sounds good.
Like, you know, like that it's inseparable now.
So let us introduce ourselves so that you so that we can interrupt each other better. So I'm Paul, and I taught for 30 years in the Bronx. How long have you taught in the Bronx?
This is my first year. I was in Brooklyn last year, and I've taught in other countries for a couple of years as well. So yeah, in the Bronx, my first year.
Nice. Chris Sloan?
Yeah. So my name is Chris Sloan, and I teach high school at Judge Memorial in Salt Lake City, Utah. And so I teach English, composition, and then I also teach media production and photography. And I've been, you know, associated with Youth Voices for many years.
15.
Yeah, yeah. And so, you know, what I think my students could bring to your students is they're willing and able to comment on other students' work and provide constructive criticism is a regular part of our class. So yeah, I'm interested in bringing you guys on, and I think your students, like mine, really get motivated when they get feedback from people who are outside of the classroom and oftentimes, you know, very far away geographically.
Yeah, it'd be so interesting because it's like that's just as real as someone right next to you now, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Nice to meet you.
Cool. And Harry?
Hey, yep, I'm teaching in Delaware now, Woodbridge High School, and I just came from 6 years in Mexico City, so I'm still kind of advising their international magazine from afar, and they still want to do some projects that we said we wanted to do, and they're like, hey, we're college, but we still stay all in touch every week. So the idea is to put some of these projects that we did like on a high school level. I think they're very interested in tapping into students from outside of their circle as well to get some of these projects done, because it's just, I think it's like a level above what we did in high school together, and they see that as a big picture. So it'd be nice to be able to get some students from around the globe that we could work on some projects, and that's what I was thinking when I came up with some of these, when we were talking about them.
Wow. So you're like doing the Mexican side, but you're also in Delaware. So you're kind of like playing two
Yeah,
roles. Is that right?
I left. Yeah, I left to start this year in Delaware, but the problem is that I was the only. I'm not. I was the main advisor, and so the other teachers that are left behind are kind of doing it as a, when I can do it, I'll do it. But I feel bad because the students that are like seniors and juniors are really into it, and they're like, we really want to do another production this year. And so every year we go to Columbia University. We go to the Scholastic Press Conference. They have one in the fall. They have one in the spring. So we go to the one in the spring. And we still have connections with the students in Mexico. I was able to get 10 kids from Mexico to go again this year. So we're going to meet up in New York in March. And I thought maybe that would be cool if we could get some of these projects to go ahead of time, maybe doing youth voices, maybe other ways. But then in March, we meet up when we're there at the conference. So I got 10 committed to go. They put money down. They're going through the procedures of getting the plane and the lodging and everything for the mid-March. But in the meantime, it'd be cool to do some things,
So cool. And that, you said that's university, right?
So at Columbia University?
Yeah. Columbia, yeah, here.
Yep. It'll be, it's called the SPCA. It's like Scholastic Press. Yeah.
So that's in the future. I do want to hear what you think our next step might be to doing some project around Latin America. And Armin, what percent of your students do you think come from Latin America?
Yeah, the majority are from Dominican Republic. We have a couple from Honduras. Some kids who came like by bus or like by foot, like intense stories. And then we also have a couple kids from West Africa. So I would say it's about 3/4 like Spanish speaking and a third either French, or we have one Chinese, one Russian, one Portuguese, two Bangla. So it's a pretty nice mix, but the majority are Spanish speakers from Dominican Republic.
There's kids from American School too that come from the Sudan and from New Zealand, and some from UK. I mean, there's some. The dominant are from Mexico and Latin America, but there's also students that are brought into the American School because their parents are relocated from Europe or from different places. So there's a slight mix. A lot from China, South Korea, and Japan as well. So it's nice to have the diversity,
Armin,
because I think.
Am I saying your name correctly, Armin? Is it Armin?
Yeah, Armin.
Armin. Okay, sorry. So I sent you an email with a way to get all of your students on kind of fast, right? With a Google Sheet. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But Harry, so don't get confused by this next question. Harry, how could we get some of the students who are involved in this on Youth Voices, maybe? And there are pages on Youth Voices which are just like a web page that they can build, right? In any way they want to. And there are templates and ways to think about that. Mm-hmm. And most students don't do that. Most students are just publish discussion posts, mm-hmm. Which might be a way to go about it too, to start. I don't know. People could publish some images and mm-hmm. say what they're up to. What do you think the next steps would be in getting kids? I want to say getting kids publishing on Youth Voices.
Right.
But maybe also we want to look for that time again to connect up and have them do some planning.
Yeah. So when I put the proposal for that grant, it said, look, we'd like at least like 500 kids. I'm like, oh, like 500 students, really? And I thought, I had an English class come in from American School, and they said, you know what, if you do that photo project and you're working with other students from another class, we'd like to do it with you. And that's like 6 classes of about 20 kids. It's 120 right there. So I thought if I could do it, like share it with other students, maybe, okay, American School. And then we have students from here, Woodbridge, who don't know anything about Youth Voices. And I think I'd really like to introduce the start of this project using Youth Voices as like the platform, because it would be a lot easier for me to introduce it. I don't know Youth Voices at all, which they don't seem to be familiar with it. And then we could use that as a platform, and we could decide maybe all the students involved from the different places, maybe some from New York, maybe some from American School, maybe some from Delaware, and say, okay, if this is what we want as a product, how do we approach that using Youth Voices as a platform? Do we create a page, or do we just do a Q&A at first and get people's responses and see how the project should go? Because I've been looking on here the last couple of days, and I saw the one where you had different steps to go through to analyze, I think, a piece. And I think that was LGBT, I think, topic at first that I was looking at. There's a lot of different topics in there. And
so
that's what in my head.
Let me, just to be concrete here, and am I sharing properly?
Yes.
Let's see. Let's try not to turn it off. Whoops, that embed can't be found. Is that? No, okay, I'm sharing properly. That's weird. Hold on.
Yeah, this is what I was looking at. That was that part. Yeah.
So what about this one, which seems somewhat similar? Oh, this is the embed that can't be found. Great. Okay, I'll have to go find it another way.
Okay.
Keep talking. So
Paul,
what do you think the next steps will be? What would we tell the students to do?
I just noticed I have 3 or 4. I have these classes because I'm a librarian and I don't have actual classes, but I have these classes called independent study. And it's where juniors and seniors come in. It's like a study hall, but they use that time to just strictly use the library for research. And so 2 or 3 of the kids have finished their research projects, and they're like, "Hey, break, what do you need help with?" So I have them come behind the library desk and do like librarian stuff. You know, they learn the Dewey Decimal, they learn how to catalog, blah, 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 stuff like that. But a couple of the girls had mentioned, you know, like, well, you know, they're kind of new to the school, and they're like, you know, we'd like to do something. And, you know, how she would like to create a club that had, like, that created this awareness of how you treat women and how men treat women, how women treat men, to, like, get past stereotypes.
Right, but that's not this project, right?
No, but what I did was I said to her, you know, I told her about this project. I told her about this possible project of using photographs to depict, you know, and she's like, "Oh, that sounds really cool." She's like, "But I don't know anything about Youth Voices." But I think the kids that help me do stuff, they're always asking me, "What can I do? What can I do?" If we could figure out, like maybe among all of us and including some of the students, like a target plan involving Youth Voices, that would be something that they would be able to work on like every other day. At least those kids that are with me right now, I could say, okay, you know what? I need you to get in, and this is what we need to do. And they would do it in a heartbeat. They're asking me every day of things that they want to do independently. But it would be really nice to get to a point where I had kids here that would collaborate with Chris's kids about maybe critiquing things, and maybe, you know, other, you know, our kids with our men's kids that are going back and forth about the nationalities and how people look at things, or I don't know, you know, like it just seems like we could use Youth Voices as a center. And if it could be a center for launching some idea of this project, that'd be amazing. But I think might be my key to combining some kids that I have at Woodbridge and at the American School together. Maybe we make decisions on what would this look like to get this project done, if that makes sense.
So
it does make sense.
In general, I think of a real strength of Youth Voices is the conversations that students have.
Yeah.
And so oftentimes I think of it as kind of a process blog, process journal of the kind of research. And I tend to look at it kind of, I do a lot of like nonfiction writing, I guess. So this is a place where they'll put like, here's what I just read today and here's what I think about it. And then they'll converse with other students who are writing about similar things that they're, so there's that work that kind of goes on in the background. And in general, then we usually work up to something where there's this other piece that's kind of a more collected individual project. Like maybe they finally put it into a research paper. You know, but the same thing could work with your book, Harry, where...
Yeah, I mean, exactly. What you said, like building up to a collective project, that's what I would like to see. Like more than just a paper and assignment. Right. I mean, something that could actually be published eventually if we wanted to. But I mean, the way you said it was exactly the way I, was thinking it could work. Yeah.
So Harry, I'm going to do the same thing as I did with Armin, which is to send you a Google Sheet to
Okay.
copy, and if you could fill in as much of that as possible for those students,
Sure.
it's just email addresses and so forth, then I'll get them on the site and then follow up with them. I just wanted to look at this this playlist because it seems like an interesting way to start to my mind, and something's wrong with the embed, but I found the map anyhow. And it's simply this: take a photograph of a beautiful spot in your neighborhood, right? And then use some point of view writing. So I can show an example of that if you want to think about that. But then they pin their photo onto a map, right? And this is what all we have so far are kids in the Bronx, right? But and then there's some writing that goes with it, right? So that might be an interesting way to kind of get started. What do you think?
That's what I was thinking when you were saying that, like, not to make it confusing for the students that wanted to do this collective project, but like so that they get familiar with youth voices. If we could establish like a common site where we all get together and discussing maybe this project and what we think it would look like, but along the side, we have an assignment or two that we all participate in. Maybe that's providing feedback of one of the issues that are already up there. And by doing that, providing feedback to somebody else that's already on Youth Voices, but they're getting to know it. You know what I mean? And in the process, all of us together are learning how to be more involved with Youth Voices so that we can apply that to what we want to do for our own project, whether it's the photo book, like that. We're doing one thing on the side as we're doing it, because as we're doing that, we're getting to learn Youth Voices more. I think it's getting more familiar with responding to other students and things like that.
So how do you feel about this project then, to start?
This one you're pointing at, the photograph?
Yeah.
I like it. I mean, because it seems to go with what we want to do. If that's what we want to do as a group, where we all come up with the production of a photo book with different perspectives, but we could start practicing with this that's already set up, with like taking a photograph of your area. Maybe that'd be a way that we see where we're all from, where we get all together and we say, look, this is Chris's kids, these are where they're from, this is what they see. This is our men's kids, and this is what they're seeing. This is what our kids are seeing in Mexico City, and this is what our kids are seeing in Delaware.
Right, and it all goes on the same map, and there are instructions for how to do that. Right? They just edit this map and then
and it could be an
put their pin on it.
informal way of us all getting acquainted with each other, to see kind of like getting us to know each other through Youth Voices a little bit, but kind of working towards a common product.
Right.
I don't know. What do you guys think? I'm afraid of throwing so much at them new that they're like, well, we're doing like these 3 things. We don't see where this is going. But I'm trying to figure out how to make it more mainstream and clear of this is getting to know the platform. But ultimately, we all want to collaborate on this one project.
Yeah, so another thing that, like my students, I think about how can they help your students? And so a lot of times what I'll have my students do is they'll read the post of someone, and then I'll tell them that they need to suggest some resources that the student writer might want to check out. So this is how I try to have my students actually help other students with their, typically like their passions or their inquiry or that kind of thing. And so in their comment, they'll say like, I like this aspect of your writing. It makes me think about this. Like, I just came across this article that I read, and like, here's what you all, or, like, here's, you should go read it and let me know what you think. And I don't know, I think that's valuable for other student writers to see other perspectives and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I realize that's a little different than what we were just talking about, because the one task is like, let's get to know each other. And what I'm talking about is maybe a little bit different there. But I just wanted to let you know like what you might expect from my students.
Yeah.
But I think that's what maybe if our kids wanted to put together a photo book, or they wanted to put together a colonial book for kids, they would want to know what the average student outside of their own circle would think of that and how it's presented. I think they'd want to get that perspective, because their idea is to actually make it something appealing to somebody that's outside of their own cultural circle. And how else are they going to do that unless they to the city, which for some of them, that's probably not going to happen.
So I want to hold your feet to the fire on the Latin American what's stereotypes, and what's and I'm thinking those kids in Oakland, Chris, your kids who put those, what are those boxes called?
Shadow boxes.
The shadow boxes. A lot of those are Latino students, right? And they deal with those issues. So, and they might not be tagged properly, but I could go in and find those, and then we could have a category, a tag where they could find. So is that okay to keep this emphasis of dealing with stereotypes about Latin America?
I think it's cool. Yeah. I like it. There was a famous, I forget, an artist from the Smithsonian American Art Museum. We did it as an exhibit, and he made chandeliers, but he used glue guns. I can't remember his name, but you glue all these things to represent who you are as a person, and it was really cool.
You glue what?
Sorry?
What do you glue? I just didn't hear that.
You glue like just anything to represent you. Like you took a coat hanger and you would make it kind of stretch it all out, and you'd make it so you could hang it from the ceiling. But then you start to hot glue gun things to it that would represent your culture. Obviously, this was started by somebody in Latin America, so there was a lot of things that people didn't understand what were on it. But when we first did that project in Delaware, there was a lot of Latin American students and Hispanic students that would do it. But then there were students that had never been out of the country. But it was a cool intro exercise, kind of like the shadow boxes, because actually be hot glued gun on there. But then after they were all done, they're hanging on the ceiling, we'd walk around and look at them all. And if you didn't know what something was on there, like obviously a soccer ball means somebody plays soccer. But the thing is, if there's other things on there, there's a purse with all these little children. And they're like, what is that? Well, in Mexico, that means, having a lot of friends. And I mean, things like that. And each other's culture just by the artifacts that they put on this chandelier is really cool. But it was good for an international literature course, talking about like how you discover other things about each other.
Cool.
In that case, the chandelier. But I think the way Paul was talking, that shadow box kind of does the same thing. Maybe
is that a shadow box? I've never heard of this.
This is the shadow box, yes, and it
take the
deals.
shoe box, and what do you do with it?
I will get the teacher who made these to help more, but on this. But I know that they are collecting together, and if you read what's written here, they're collecting together both the dominant narrative of who they are or the stereotype, and then thinking about who they really are, right? What is their counter narrative?
So it's like both together, mixed.
Right. And I'm not sure how it works out exactly, but here you see, they only see that me, those are the stereotypes that people put on Mexicans. This is because they see the outside, et cetera, et cetera. So there's some interesting reflective work they do as well.
That's
posting this. And,
so,
he's gotten a couple of comments, but commenting on the shadow boxes that are about Latino, let's broaden it to Latino experience, would make a lot of sense, yeah?
Yeah.
So
definitely.
I don't know if you can see the comments, the chat box. But I put a link to all the shadow box assignments that are tagged on Youth Voices, and then that assignment actually comes from the Oakland, California Unified District. Like they have a project where they do this in multiple schools. So
where's the link?
It's in the chat on the
chat box in the Hangout. So that's the assignment there that the Oakland School District, some of the schools use. It's called the shadow box. And I think, so that gives you some background as to what they told their students to do. And then I think if you look around at some of those, you'll see a lot of my students' comments on those students' shadow box.
Wow.
So in that case, what I instructed my students was for that particular thing is like, before I was saying like, oh, my students will give you resources and that kind of thing. But for this one, I think what you'll see is a lot more just validation of ideas. And I think of Armin, I think of your students who are bilingual and maybe new to, maybe not confident in their English skills. What my students, I think you'll look in some of those comments and my students are validating their ideas. And so I think that's good for writers.
So this is your student,
well.
Ying?
I'm not sure if Ying is mine or Brian's, but it looks like that's probably a Chinese, an international student. But that's probably, it shows the intent of most of the
This
students.
is how you find out where the student is from, by the way. You go to profile.
Is there any? Oh, I see. It's right here.
Oh, that student comes from.
Okay, yeah.
Maybe I can't seem to find it.
Find what again?
I guess I'll just look on the site. What you're sharing there, Paul, and what you're talking about.
Yeah, the chat window you're looking for is on the left side, way at the top. It's a blue chat symbol.
Okay, it's not the end of the world. But
I'll find it for you. Don't worry. So,
Armin, you're trying to find it on the Youth Voices site or the chat in the Google Hangout?
Anywhere.
Okay.
You're trying to find it on the Hangout, is what Chris was pointing to.
Oh, okay. You don't.
I mean, actually, we have a Hangout, all three of us, and I'm just saying hi. But I'm not sure if I'm missing. If I'm not in the right group.
I see that that's coming on the Google over on the Google Gmail.
Is that not where I should be, or is that?
So if you, yeah.
I was just curious because I think it's really cool, and I would love to share it.
Yeah.
I put it in
the
Hangout. I put it in another window for him to see. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yeah, that's everything that Chris put in there. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I was trying to be practical and real, and then there are too many possibilities here, right? Armin, I wanted you to talk also about your idea of podcasts. You said your kids are recording what they do at the end of the week?
Yeah, so...
But question of them creating podcasts of some sort?
Yeah, there's two really interesting things. I guess I'll start with one because it's more global. It's all my students. Yeah, every week they're doing about a minute recording, 2 minutes, and it's helping them build their English. But the aim would be to make it kind of like, I heard some of the things that they had, like small podcasts from your site, where it's like maybe two kids are having a conversation about their immigration story and then relating it to something they read. So like I want to build them to that, but it's like that may be a slow process. But this is something I was thinking around, like being able to maybe create connections of kids who are from one kid from Africa, another kid from Dominican Republic or Honduras, and they have a conversation. Maybe it would be very hard because, I mean, these kids are learning English, but I mean, my aim was to do something where people are sharing their story and then finding the commonalities in their reality. So this is option one, and the other one is just I also have an Arabic class with like a Syrian woman who we Skype in. It's called Natakalam, and they hire like refugees primarily from Syria. This is another topic. I'm also into different topics.
It's okay.
But it may be interesting to have those students talk about their experience doing that or their experience. I mean, I just wanted to share it.
Where does she Skype in from?
So she's in Lebanon, the teacher, and yeah, I can send the link after, but it's really interesting because it's like a social enterprise. Because when you're a refugee, it's really hard to find employment. And this girl happens to also be part of a group of Syrian singers in Lebanon, but she also is teaching with this program. I just wanted to share it because I think it'd be really
it sounds great
to just share this with other schools and other students, and just like, you know what I mean, this reality, and I think it's important.
One of the girls that graduated from American school. Sorry, Chris, I didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry. She works for the United Nations Refugee organization as a volunteer, but last summer we interviewed two people that were in refugee camp, and the recording didn't work. We had the audio. It was great.
Okay.
I was like, you're kidding me, really? And she's like, well, if you ever want to do that again, let me know. And she lives in D.C., Washington, D.C., but she worked with these guys that are representatives from different refugee camps, and their main goal is to advocate for the rights of refugees that come to the United States from other countries. To the UN, United Nations, like, I mean, she's only probably all of 20, but the whole time we were in American School Foundation, she was always involved in the United Nations, and it became such a thing for her. She does it all the time, and she has some crazy, crazy contacts for people that would be interviewing for different things about refugee camps and stuff. It's really great, but it's cool because every time somebody graduates from American school, we have these contacts from another country, and so we keep in touch. But if we could somehow funnel those more instead of just having them scattered everywhere, that'd be really cool.
So we'll turn to Chris here in a second. On the first one, the more informal recording of stuff, it's really easy to hit add media and just upload an MP3 file to a Youth Voices post, and then it just pops right at the top of the file. So there's that possibility, which is I'd love to see used even more than it is.
You mean recording live what's happening, even if you're using the mic for a conversation? Is that what you said?
No, what I'm saying, you said that they were doing 2 or 3 minute conversations or a minute reflection or so forth.
Yeah.
They could create a post on Youth Voices and just really easily upload their MP3 recording to that post. Right?
Sure.
And that goes out to everybody.
Yeah.
So that's one real quick technical solution to what you're thinking about there.
Yeah.
With that. But Chris, you wanted to jump in there, I think.
I think I was just agreeing with everybody, but while I'm here, I have a student who is our dance department is doing connecting with the local refugee group, and they're trying to dance the stories of immigrants. So I have a student who's on Youth Voices already, who and there's quite a few of the dancers, people who are in the dance class who I teach, who are on Youth Voices, who would be interested in the immigrant stories that you have, just from a creative perspective of, like they are, trying to understand immigrant stories, refugee stories better. And so just for what it's worth, they would be interested in your students' stories.
Can I add something to that?
Please.
Yeah.
Have you heard of the Garifuna? They're they're a group of people. They're African descendants, but they live in Honduras. But they're also mixed with indigenous people. And we have not a big population, but a nice population of them. And I made contacts because where my school is, it's like a neighborhood of Garifuna. It's kind of like, you could say, like a tribe or an ethnic group. They're a mix of indigenous with Africans, but they're from Central America. Anyways, I made contacts with a group, and one of the ideas that I had, which may parallel what you just said, was that the kids would have to talk about being Garifuna. Because a lot of these kids, they come up maybe escorted or not. Like the kids who come unaccompanied. Mm-hmm. But they also have this really deep culture. You know what I mean? Even if
and different language as well.
Yeah, Garifuna is a language. It's a mixture of like an African and a Carib language. Carib is like an indigenous group of like the Antilles Islands. Anyways, I have a contact with a group that does dance, and I'm trying to see how to connect them in my school. It's kind of like we have all these ideas, and we're trying to see how to put them into the physical. Connect the dots, but. It could be something. I'm just giving the idea that my students would go to the Saturday weekly classes, make videos of the Garifuna dance, do interviews, talk to people. And I'm not sure how that would funnel in what you're doing there, but I wanted to share it.
Well, if nothing else, I think my students would give them some good feedback on, like they're telling the stories of these, the Garifuna and the dances. Like my students would be interested in those stories. So just from their English speaking perspective, like I think it would help them to just get some validation about how that story is interesting to a subset of my students.
Yeah.
And I think that's a real powerful motivation, is when students give just some feedback.
So we need to get students on Youth Voices, because when Chris says, I have a student who's doing this big project, but she's already on Youth Voices, like she already has the access. So let's do that sort of basic groundwork.
Yeah.
And I'll contact Harry and Armand about that. We did establish a couple of weeks ago that the Repentino magazine in Mexico City meets at about 2:40, I think. Central. No,
Central. 2:45 Central.
Central?
On Mondays.
So if there is anybody available at, let's say, 3:45 Eastern, or that'd be 1:45 in Mountain Time, right? Let's try to hook up a youth cast and do what we're doing right now with some of these, not like a whole class or anything, but a couple of key people to kind of form a committee to organize some of this. So this is youth run a little bit.
Yep. And I think,
does that sound like a possible time to aim for?
Yeah.
Armin, what do you think?
You said 3:45 on a Wednesday?
It'd be 3:45 on Mondays.
45 Monday. I get off at 4:30.
Who does?
I do.
They stay for about an hour.
But is there an after school group or a kid who would stay after school?
Oh, you want a kid who would stay to be able to talk with other? I could ask if I could find someone.
Okay, so I'm going to send an email summarizing what we just said, because we said a lot.
Yeah.
to all of you, and then I'll send it out to the wider network as well. And I'm going to aim for that time, and then say if that doesn't work, please propose another one, and we'll see what we can do.
Yeah, I know I have like this PD usually, but I could see if I could finagle it around. But usually it goes to 4:30. But I could look for a student.
And I can tap into that one. That whole set of English classes said they were interested in participating in something like this. And even though they're not, some of those kids are non-Repentino, but there'd be a bunch of them. I think I could get to come to that.
Sounds good.
So just in closing, Paul, what I would say is, Armin and Harry, like, you think of what's most valuable for your students. My students are pretty adaptable. And so if, Armin, your students want to do some bilingual podcasts and just get them out there, if you think that's the most useful thing for your students, then my students will just respond to those. And I think that's legitimate and, engaging and motivating for students. And then Harry, if you want to, like you're talking about a literary magazine kind of thing, I already talked to our editor of our literary magazine, and she was really interested in the idea of collaborating with you. So my point is, like, you guys think of what's most valuable for you, and I can adapt some of my groups to support what you want to do.
I think basically the key.
Could I?
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yep, we'll end with questions here. Chris, you got cut off there, but I think we got it. Thank you.
Could I share the assignment I was going to give the assignments to the students?
Sure. Yeah.
And then I don't know how to email it to you, and I don't know, Harry, what you're thinking. Like, we were either going to do like iMovie or make an audio of like your immigration story just to start off.
Great.
But I would like to do that, but I could share with you unless you want to add other things to it or something.
No, that sounds great.
Harry, were you going to say something? I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I know my kids want to leave a permanent mark of a product, but they want that permanent product to be a combination from students, not just from Mexico, but it's kind of like it was a voice from Latin America. That's what their goal was. Their whole goal was, what can we do as a product that would leave something behind? Not just for a semester, not just for an assignment, but something that can be out there, like that's why they were thinking of like a photography book that would compare comparisons, of somebody from coming to the States that have never been to the States versus people that are individuals that are from Mexico that have been here for a while. Or, the whole reason of doing a Colonia book about Mexico City is because about that. And they thought, but this is a way we can reach a wider audience ultimately. But they just want something, they would really get inspired about something that's permanent, but that's been put together from lots of people, not just themselves.
Yeah, and it's not either or, right? I mean, I think that's the key.
Right.
The idea of using a category, and there is a category of Repentino on Youth Voices. Anything you want to go into that book, you use that category, and then the editors sift through that stuff and find it. Armin, just to throw one more thing at you, given what the assignment you talked about there, youthvoices.live/Powtoon, Powtoon.
Alto?
Is Powtoon.
Powtoon, okay.
Powtoon. I just looked it up and I think it works. Yep.
Okay, I'm just listening.
Is another our immigrant stories using an animation that Louise Balso, whose students are becoming, who teaches in Brooklyn at Park Slope Collegiate. She teaches all students there, and is becoming much more active on the site right now. And so she would be around to help
How
that project. Okay. So lots of choices. I will summarize some of these and make sure we're all connected, at least through that email, in the next day or two. Continue. Welcome, Armin.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm really excited. And is it easy for kids to navigate this? I see it's like kind of like Facebook with the liking and stuff. Is it easy for them to navigate it?
It's getting easier all the time. I think. Yeah, I mean, yeah, we manage it. And if you can't find things, let us know. But like Chris was able to find the shadow box stuff pretty fast, and there are links to that. And now you're under the members thing, your school would pop up, and you'd be able to find Chris's school there too, and so forth. So yeah, we're making it easy to find things. Yeah.
Cool.
So
it sounds amazing. I'm really happy to meet all of you.
Yeah, me too. I think it'd be cool. I'd be nice to. I want to get the whole thing with Youth Voices going. There's been a lot on my end as far as checking in and putting some posts and things like that. But I'd like to do something a little bit more substantial. And I think I have an advantage of being in a school that we didn't do it. I mean, we got into it a little bit, but there's some kids that are interested, and I'm just trying to figure out how to get them.
Connecting with some of those English teachers would be important too. It sounds.
Yeah. Yep. And it seems like there's some interested, so I want to grab that now while they're interested. Yeah.
Great. All right, guys. Thank you. Sorry about the mix-up within the two videos and so forth, but thanks a lot.
Night.
Night.
Good to meet you all. Good night.
See ya. Thanks.
Yeah.